Okay, good. All right, recording has started a wee bit into the meeting. Stefan has just been presenting the latest work on GitOps Toolkit. The slides will be linked in the meeting notes afterwards, so you can go through that presentation, which has lots of cool stuff. All right, so I guess this is a good time. Stefan, is there more stuff you want to say? I have a very quick agenda.
No, I'm
just go to questions and other announcements and what have you. So all I wanted to say was I've written up a design for image update in Flux v2. So just to give a bit of context for that, part of the mission of GitOps Toolkit is to be able to assemble a Flux v2, which serves the same purpose as Flux v1, which is the one we have now, but is, has better factoring and more modern build process, and sort of works better and removes some of the things that that didn't work so great with Flux. So part of the things, one of the things that Flux v1 does that would be missed otherwise is to update images in manifest files in Git automatically by, I'm sure everyone's aware of this, by scanning image registries and finding the latest semver or latest whatever version and then going back and making a commit. So for two reasons, we need to come up with a design for and an implementation for doing that. One reason is that that's too big a chunk to leave out of Flux v2, so it's needed for that. Another reason is that it is a specific case of something more general that we want to do with GitOps Toolkit, which is to enable automation for people to kind of build their own automation workflows out of the bits. Flux v1 does a really, really specific thing. It would be nice if you can, with GitOps Toolkit, kind of make your own workflows out of the bits we give you rather than just having that one specific thing. So I will put a link to the design in the meeting notes and you can go and have a look if you are interested. That is all I wanted to say. So I will open the floor to questions. And I have a suggestion. I see Philip's here, and he sent an email to the dev list about some of the observability stuff, which I thought was interesting. So if you like, Philip, you could run us through your Flux status, I think it's called.
Yeah.
But please take this time if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of this idea. I think I created an issue maybe a year ago or 9 months ago, and the Flux GitHub repo. But it's this idea I've had for a while now, and is kind of trying to solve a lot of the complaints I'm getting from developers regarding Flux, because a lot of them have been looking at like Argo and saying, oh, but Argo has a UI and this is really nice. And I have my, I guess, issues with how the UI is, how you deal with access control and those things in Argo, and I actually like Flux a lot better. So this is kind of a compromise. I know that Stefan has done a lot of work there with the notification solution, pushing it out to like MS Teams and Slack and stuff like that. But I've looked more at, for example, solving this problem by updating statuses in your commit. So GitHub, GitLab, and most Git providers support a status API, which basically allows you to set a status for a specific commit ID. That's basically how most of their pipeline solutions work. So it will look like you've run a pipeline. So what I built is this project called Flux Status. It works nearly identically to how Flux Cloud works, with some differences. So it consumes events from Flux in the same way that Flux Cloud does. The difference is now that it does an API request to, it has like some exporter, and it supports like GitLab, so it updates GitLab and says, okay, so Flux could apply this commit or Flux could not, and then you get like a green check mark or a cross or whatever. But then what I also implemented is a solution called, which I call a polar. So it kind of tries to do a lot of things, which is not that great, but it pulls the workloads then to see if your Helm releases starts and to check if your deployment starts, and then also feeds back or updates with the status back to your commit. Because what this allows me to do then is we have a solution where we run larger CI pipelines, so we can then check to see if a commit has successfully been applied by Flux, but then also has it been able to start, and then we can have some sort of validation there at least to know, okay, so it's not failing horribly at least. And this allows us to then remove all the issues around access control to UIs and stuff like that, because if you have access to the repo and you can see the status of the commit, yeah, then you should be able to get that information.
Philip, would you be open to collaborate on the notification controller to do the same thing? Because so what happens today with the events inside an event that we issue, we have the branch, the commit, the actual SHA of the commit, and we could potentially add the source repository, the source identification.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, notification controller could forward the event to this specialized component that knows how to post on GitHub, and we could have another for GitLab and so on. So when people install the toolkit, they could say, okay, I want notification controller, but I also want the GitHub status update component. Yeah. And because I don't think it makes sense to deploy something that talks with all these APIs, because you'll have like this gigantic thing that, the toolkit idea is to have specialized things that you can pick and choose. So in my mind, we could create like the first one would be like a GitHub status update, and see how that goes, and afterwards implement others if needed for GitLab. And I know which other Git provider has this kind of APIs, but would you be open on this?
Yeah. So basically every year, because I'm a big user of the Azure DevOps right now, because that's what we use in my company. So, but basically every Git provider seems to have this. But I'm very open. I've looked at, I've been trying to follow as much as I can, even though I have a lot of work to do, the changes that are happening in the notification controller. So my idea is, hopefully, I have some changes I want to do to Flux status, but then because we have a development cluster, my idea is to try to set up some sort of environment with a new solution, so that, and then try to start making changes to the notification controller so we can actually see if it works. So that's my hope, at least for the summer.
Yeah, so we could build this into notification controller, or we could deliver a separate component that notification controller will just forward all these events to that dedicated component, which is, let's say, GitHub status update. Yeah. It receives the event. And what we don't have today, what we don't attach to the event, so we attach to the event the Helm release or the customization that created that event, but we don't embed in the event the source. We don't embed in the event, for example, the Git repository, because the Git repository is referenced in the customization spec itself. So we have two options. Either we enrich the event by adding also the source to it, or this dedicated component receives the event. Okay, it's a customization. Let me get it from etcd, see what source it uses, then connect to that source and post the event. So we could enrich the event, but maybe that's not the best idea to have this huge event that has all these APIs embedded in it. And my idea will be like, the event tells you where to look for and get, for example, the GitHub credentials, how you connect back to that particular repository, because you can have many repositories with the GitOps toolkit. with Flux, it's only one, so you know where to connect to. But with the GitOps Toolkit, you can have like 10 repositories, right? So when you receive an event, you have to look up the specific repository, get the authentication from the secret, and then call out GitHub for that particular repository and write back the status.
I think as long as there's some logical way of getting it out, I don't think we have to put it into the event object. So that should be fine. What is your opinion? I don't know if I'm not really sure if it's an anti-pattern right now, but the idea of, because Helm, the Helm operator right now, and it seems like the Helm controller in the future offer some sort of health check at least to see if things have started, and you can solve a lot of things by just starting post-hook jobs to do, like if you want extra custom health checks, basically, to force the chart to basically wait for your job. But do you know if there is some solution, for example, for the customization controller and things like that, how we would solve that?
Yeah, the customization object allows you to say, hey, I want to apply this directory. Then do the health checks for these deployments, these stateful sets, and these daemon sets. So it uses the default readiness and readiness probe like Kubernetes does. So it looks at the deployment status. If that fails after a particular deadline that you can set in the customization object, then it will issue an event. It will notify you on Slack or through Kubernetes events that for this customization, the apply succeeded, but the health check failed. And it will tell you for what particular object the health check failed, because it's an array. You can define a health check from that looks at multiple deployments, stateful sets, daemon sets, whatever, right? So you could actually write back on that Git commit that what in that Git commit, maybe you have like 3 deployments and only one failed. You'll see on the status there that what particular deployment actually failed. That happens today on Slack. We send those information on Slack, Discord, Rocket, whatever. But I think it's a great way to push these events back to the source. I mean, it's probably the ideal way of doing notifications if you are using something like GitHub or GitLab that provides such an API.
Yeah, so that actually, and then we could do, basically, we'd end up with one event for the main Fluxes applying things, and then you'd have individual events for each customization resource, then pushing back saying, okay, this one's done, this one's done, this one's done, and then you'd have to implement whatever, because CI logic, if you want to do something with the information there. Because what I like with this solution is then you're not taking responsibility for how you're doing things outside of Flux, because it's just, here's the information, deal with it however you want, and then you get some kind of decoupled nature in the whole solution. So, but I'd be really happy if we could cooperate, because I don't think there's any idea having a separate project to do this. It would be way better if we could just solve this in GitOps Toolkit instead.
Yeah, we are definitely open on having some controller that knows how to write back to GitHub or GitLab. I think it's we already have implementations for the webhooks, so we know, okay, you say this is a GitHub webhook, so I know how to verify the identity and so on. It makes a lot of sense to be able to write back to the status condition as well, and that's a first step to write on the commit status. But what would be really, really cool if we at some point we get with the GitOps Toolkit in a position where we can monitor pull requests, and you could write back to the pull request status and say, hey, your whatever you have in this pull request, I deployed it in a ephemeral namespace and it crashes. Yeah,
right? That would be actually even better, because then you're not limited to, because I know GitHub has a arbitrary limitation. I think it's like 200 characters in the message field for a status. So that's something that we just have to watch out for.
On the pull request status, you can have like a body of like the whole log, like service CI does or something, and then you can list there the exact kubectl apply result, which can be extremely verbose. That will not fit in a commit status. So for those type of errors in our dedicated component that writes back to the GitHub status. If it's a commit status, then we have to create like a resume of a summary of that error. We cannot just post it there like the whole, like if you have like 100 things in the YAML, the kubectl apply fails, you'll get a response back with all the things that fail.
Yeah.
Huge. That So I invite you to open a discussion on the. So we finally managed to enable GitHub discussions on the Toolkit repository.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the perfect place to brainstorm on ideas and invite others to comment on them. They are not issues. It's not a bug or something like that. It's just an idea, and I think discussions makes a lot of sense because you can reply to each comment. Looks like, let's say, Stack Overflow a little bit. So if you can you start the discussion there around writing back to the status condition, and we can brainstorm on a proposal there, how this could work. Also, please link to all your current implementations. So if someone is interested how this actually works, could look at the source code.
I put it in the meeting as well.
Great. Was it the Toolkit repository?
Yeah. The Toolkit repository, there is a discussion tab there next to issues and pull requests, and in there you can initiate a new discussion. So it's a new thing in GitHub, and I think it fits perfectly with open source and proposal and stuff that are not really issues, are just things that the community wants to discuss around and come up with a design.
Great. Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you very much.
Result. That's cool. Is there any other stuff that people want to bring up?
Hello, I'd like to ask something.
Please.
I see that you're choosing to implement and support your own notification controller based on that Prometheus is not a good tool to notificate very specific problems like which manifest is failing or which repo is failing. But you said that this should be added to logs monitoring, and I see that there is a lot of logs notification tools based on logs like Graylog, Elasticsearch, and Locky, and they already have their own notification implementation. So why did you choose to implement and support your own?
So there are two things here. In the GitOps toolkit, we standardized around JSON structured logs. So every single component will logs out in JSON format, and we have every single component reports the errors, informations, and everything the same way. So now with Stackdriver, Loki, whatever you are using, Elasticsearch, it's very easy to do your own alerting based on logs. We should publish a guide on and give you some examples of the logs and how easy it is now with the toolkit to create all these things only around logging. What we are doing with the notification controller, we are offering a different option of getting these notifications if you don't have a logging mechanism in place, right? I mean, let's say if you run on GKE and you use Stackdriver, maybe it's too expensive for your company. Like, if everything logs a lot and you save all those in Stackdriver, you could pay more for logs than the actual GKE cluster. And I think it is the same with CloudWatch and everything. So instead of forcing people into ingesting and processing all these logs, we offer them a free choice with the notification controller that just issues these events for you. But if you want to do logging, now it's way easier to do it than before, because everything is JSON, and you can say you have the error, you have the kind name, with its a customization, is a Helm repository. You also have the name of the object, the namespace, and the error message. So it's really easy to compose your own notifications based on logs right now. But it's a good thing. We should make that obvious on the Toolkit website. And
I didn't see anything talking why you're doing this. So thanks for the explanation.
It's a great question. I forgot to mention logging, but it's a major improvement that we made. Yes, we should write something, a guide on it. Also, I understand that Loki doesn't have a full text search engine, and you need to use labels. So if someone here uses Loki, maybe you can help us out, write a small guide how you can use the labels that we set in logs to for Loki, because we have like level error, kind customization, and namespace, name, error. So I am guessing with Loki it's very easy then to group and say I have 3 customization that are failing and 5 Git repositories, and then you can expand on that and see which one are failing.
Yeah, like Lucky's idea is to be just like Prometheus. You can aggregate and do customization alerts based on group. Yeah, but you answered my question. I'm really satisfied with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Also a thing on, maybe I said what I said about Prometheus. We are going to we are already exposing Prometheus metrics on each controller. But what the metrics that we are currently exposing, and I think we'll just resume to that, and we are planning on building a Grafana dashboard for the Toolkit, so you'll be able to monitor it. You'll get things like high error rate in the Helm controller, but you'll not get a metric that tells you this Helm release is failing. You will be able to see in the last 5 minutes I had so many errors. Then you either look at logs if you use Loki or something, or you either set up the notification controller to actually see the actual error and which object was it. So you can use Prometheus to get an alert based on error rates, but not get the detail of an error. I don't think Prometheus is suited for that purpose.
So there was a question in the chat about how to sort of find a good place to contribute, and here to put a link to the roadmap, Stefan. As far as actually deciding or figuring out where is a good place to start, I've said start a discussion in Toolkit or in Slack. Are there other ways that people can sort of bring up their ideas?
So I think if you have an idea, the best thing to do is create a discussion, not an issue on all these repositories. Just use the discussion on the Toolkit. We only enabled it there, so we have this only one way of getting feedback and response to it, because now we split everything in repositories. It's very hard to monitor all of them and all this stuff. But as for contributing, we will try to have issues labeled correctly with help wanted or good for starters and stuff like that. I think there are a couple of issues in the Toolkit repository for the CLI, which are very easy to take on. Some things are even not related to Go. It's like verify the binary after you download it when you install the Toolkit CLI, verify that the checksum matches. That's one example that you need some scripting skills to do that. Yeah, but discussions, I think, are the best option. Also Slack. We are on Slack, but
yeah. So often people find that just picking some low-hanging fruit issue is a good way to sort of get to know a project. So that's a good place to start. And if you have sort of bigger ideas that don't seem to fit in, like that don't have an issue that's there that represents them, then start a discussion in GitHub. It sounds like is a good way to get our attention.
yeah, we already have an ongoing discussion around multi-tenancy and RBAC, which it's interesting. If you want to look at that, it's we thought about RBAC in a particular way, and we got a different feedback. Like, what if you are a cloud vendor and the tenants cannot share any kind of information? So tenant shouldn't know that another tenant wants to register a particular Git repository on the cluster, right? How we build the bootstrap command and how we bootstrap, if you do tk bootstrap or tk install right now, means that all your tenants or your teams should collaborate with the cluster admins and register and ask the cluster admin, please register my repository, and only afterwards you can use it. But the discussion there said maybe my tenants are not teams, right? They don't collaborate with each other. They don't have to know anything about each other. So that means you have to set up the whole toolkit way differently than what we are doing today with tk install. It's not that it's not possible. It's just a totally different way of setting RBAC for it and do all these things. So that discussion is quite interesting. I took some feedback from it. I've also implemented in customized controller. So for example, right now, customized controller customization can reference a source from another namespace. But that's a small change in that direction. Many things have to be bootstrapped differently for cloud multi-tenancy. It's a big task.
I just want to shout out to the people that are correcting my notes in the meeting notes. I was trying to multitask and failing, so thank you very much. Okay, I think it's just coming up to 10:02, so I think unless there's another question, might be a good time to wrap it up. And I think when Daniel's back, he's going to organize another meeting, and we're going to sort of alternate time so that one's a bit easier for US and one's a bit easier for Europe. So I think everyone's on the Flux dev list. That's where the invitations tend to turn up. So look out for the next one. There'll be, I think, another set of meetings. Last chance if anyone wants to ask a quick question. Otherwise, I'm going to stop recording and close it all down. Cool. Well, thank you all very much for coming along. To see you, and we will see you next time.
Next time. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.